All right, so let's talk about something that just came out. I did not know this, but one of the hottest podcasts in the country is WTF with, I think his name is it Greg Maron?
It's Mark Maron.
Mark Maron. The president had a chance to sit down and talk to him about race in America. We're going to bleep it out, but he uses the N-word. Listen.
Racism, we are not cured of. And it's not just a matter of it not being polite to say in public. That's not the measure of whether racism still exists or not. It's not just a matter of overt discrimination. Societies don't overnight completely erase everything that happened 200 to 300 years prior.
Okay, so there's the President of the United States using the N-word. He doesn't just say N-word, he actually uses the word. So today people are going to be talking, Brett, about whether or not it is appropriate for the President to use the N-word and whether or not it is beneath the dignity of his office.
Yeah, I think he was speaking on that podcast that is known for some crude language, apparently, sometimes, some salty language, and chose to say that. Listen, he is the prerogative, I guess, to say those things when talking about racism from his personal knowledge, and it has a unique perspective, obviously, as the first African-American president. But I think it'll raise some eyebrows, and you'll probably have the White House respond.
Sure, I think many people wondering if it was only there that he would say it and not perhaps in a State of the Union or a more public address, if he's only doing this because he feels, cloaked in the podcast that he felt safe to do it there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's the venue. Yeah. So, but venue. He is the president.
All right, a very tough spot.
Just out this morning, an extraordinary statement from President Obama. In this podcast, the president uses the N-word, which we're about to bleep out.
Racism, we are not cured of. And it's not just a matter of it not being polite to say in public. That's not the measure of whether racism still exists or not. It's not just a matter of overt discrimination. Societies don't overnight completely erase everything that happened 200 to 300 years prior.
Okay, so that's what people are going to be talking about today. The president using the actual N-word. Here to debate, Fox News contributor David Webb and radio talk show host Garland Nixon. Guys, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Steve.
Garland,
thank you.
You told one of our producers in the last half hour, you think it's good the president used that word?
Absolutely, because what it does is it causes people who would not normally talk about the issue of race to talk about it. It brings it out. And the reality is, Dylan Roof here just the other day had a black drinking buddy that he hung out with. He didn't project himself as a racist, but in reality, when we read his manifesto, we see that it's exactly what the president said. And I think it was strategically wise for him to use that word.
You don't think that it's beneath the dignity of the office of the president of the United States to use the actual N-word?
In my honest opinion, if the first black president of the United States can't say that word, then there's something wrong with this country, particularly with some of the things that have been done that in my opinion, could be considered quite insulting to the president regarding race.
All right, David, what do you think?
Well, I'm wondering what groups the president engaged by using the N-word. Look, it is beneath the office of the president because you're the president of the United States. And in fact, what you want a president to do is reflect the dignity of the office. But put that aside. I'm not shocked by Obama using the N-word. He's playing into this narrative because it supports what he needs to push in his agenda. He says that we basically have not evolved as a society, that racism is still institutional in the United States, and it's not, because we don't have codified law, we don't have social acceptance. As a matter of fact, we have overturned racism. There are always going to be racists, and that's a difference. Racists do exist. Dylan Roof is a perfect example of that. Doesn't matter whether he hung out with a black guy or any other ethnicity, but this president has decided that he's going to divide America up, play to the base. And again, who does he engage by using the N-word? Because the people that are are already using it are the ones that are supporting a culture of violence and misogyny in gangster rap, which has gone into a mainstream, black, white, or otherwise. How about dealing with the real issue instead of sitting there using the word?
Well, there's no doubt there is a problem with racism, and is evidenced by the terrible murders down in South Carolina a couple of days ago. But Garland, let me ask you this. We were talking a moment ago, and Elizabeth brought up the point about venue. You know, the president made this comment on a podcast with a fellow by the name of Mark Maron, I believe that's how you say it, WTF, Mark Maron's podcast. They use crude language in that. Maybe he just felt he could do it there. The question is, if you feel it's okay for the President of the United States to make this kind of comment, is it okay for him to stand in the briefing room of the White House to do it in front of a joint session of Congress with State of the Union? Should he use that word there if he wants to talk about racism?
And that is a great question, because words are given meaning and definition by the context in which they are used. That word was given meaning by the context in which it's used. If you would say it right now, or if a member of the Supreme Court would say it, it would actually be a totally different word.
No, you know what? I think you're trying to nuance it too much, though, because here's the thing: the president uses it. His voice, his pulpit as president of the United States, resonates around the world. It's a big difference when the president uses it. Can you imagine if a Ted Cruz or somebody on the Republican side used it in the same context, what the reaction would be? So let's not pretend that the president using it is somehow good in one context, but not good for the other. It's kind of a dishonest argument. The fact is that this president went below the dignity of the office, and I'd rather focus more on the issue, which is we've evolved as a society, but he's pushing this racist narrative, or this institutional racism narrative, for pure political gain, when we have evolved way beyond that as a society. Now let's deal with the racists that do exist individually, like Dylann Roof, and punish them.
All right, gentlemen, we thank you both for getting up early today to talk about race and the N-word and the president. All right, what do you think about that? Email us, friends@foxnews.com.